We are rolling. Yeah, be quiet, you guys. Quiet on the set.
Welcome back, everybody, to Ready, Aim, Live. I'm Wes.
And I'm Chris.
And this week, as you can tell, I have a little bit of a special guest. It's not the normal person sitting next to me, but he is pretty well versed in the topic that we're going in today, and we're going to go ahead and break down the difference and some of the similarities between MOA and mil.
Yeah, so MOA and mil are just measurements. So it's used inside of reticles, inside of optics for finding your zero and also adjusting for different kinds of environmental things like windage, the Coriolis effect, humidity, and long-range distances to zero in your shots.
Yeah, and I've noticed definitely with the 7.62 build that I did, I bought a 4 MOA, and I have realized, shooting at 100 yards, what that coverage looks like, and what the adjustments look like with using an MOA. But you've definitely taught me quite a bit about the actual use of MOA and what it how it's actually implemented. How is the actual functionality of MOA work?
All right, so the main differences between MOA and mils is the size differences. So one MOA is 1 radius inch. So if you think about the measurement, you're looking through an optic, you're looking at a circle, especially on red dots, and like your Vortex is a perfect example. You have a circle that you're looking at. A 1 MOA at 100 yards, that dot is taking up 1 inch of your target. Now, when you talk about mils, in the standard imperial system, 1 mil is 3.6 inches at 100 yards. So you're looking at different things like the sizes comparatively. Obviously mils is a little bit bigger. But then you get down into what a lot of people start to stress about. So when you have an optic, when it is the reticle is in one or the other, you want to make sure that your adjustments for your windage and elevation are the same type of measurement. So typically what you'll find with optics is when you have an MOA dot and an MOA adjustment, 1 MOA adjustment on your optic will be something along the lines of about a 1/4 inch. They have different ones like 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch, but typically you're going to have 1/4 inch. So you're taking a quarter MOA when you make your measurements. Yeah. So which is going to come out to a 1/4 inch, 0.25 inches. Typically with your mils, 1 click is going to be 1/10 MOA. So you're going to be at 0.36 inches.
Okay.
So one
difference.
Yeah, so one is a slightly more finer adjustment than the other. Again, you can find mils in different percentages or fractions of your measurements. But the other thing I did want to touch on is that mils is typically a little bit better when you're using the metric system, because at 100 meters, 1 mil is 10 centimeters. And when you go 1/10 centimeter, you're using, or 1/10 centimeters, you're 1 centimeter adjustment at 100 meters.
So it seems like to just an average shooter, just somebody who goes out and shoots, that, picking up the MOA would probably be an easier one to actually adjust to versus the mil. I feel like it's probably not as complicated as I'm thinking. But to me, it feels like, the basis of MOA, maybe not better, but maybe a little bit simpler for somebody to just pick up and start to understand. If, breaking down simple math of, a 1/4 inch, adjusting a 1/4 inch, if you're off just a little bit, go a 1/4 inch up, do, 1 MOA or 1/4 MOA up, and being able to move around seems like it would work out, more beneficial to the average shooter.
So you're absolutely right, as long as they're using the imperial system, the American system. Because if you're using the metric system, I don't believe that there is a readily available, or I'm not sure of any immediate conversions. You would have to do your, centimeters to inches math table to be able to figure that out. So if you're in the imperial system and you're starting out, absolutely recommend an MOA. One is not specifically better than the other, but one is definitely a lot easier to comprehend. So when you're talking about 1/4 inch, 1 inch, if it tells you it's a 4 MOA like yours, okay, that's easy. 100 yards, 4 inches. 50 yards, 2 inches.
See, and that's the thing that I like is that, to me, I'm okay at math, but the idea that I can just basically go 100 yards should take up 4 inches, and I can, divide from there or multiply from there to actually pick up, where I need to adjust my MOA to be, you know, even being in the woods and us, you know, me doing the review on the 7.62 and doing some adjustments along the way, it to me seemed pretty easy to just, you know, do a couple little adjustments along the way and not having to break it down into, you know, the tenths of a, you know, of a mil and break it down even farther. I'm not shooting that far out, so.
Yeah, and realistically for an average shooter, the difference between the two, like when you're talking 0.25 inches, a quarter inch versus 0.36 inches, you're not really going to be dialing it in down to a tenth of an inch. So you kind of, to understand how far it's going to move when you click it is a good thing to know. But realistically, they're going to try to get a few inch grouping. You know, they're not trying to stack dimes. So, you know, having the MOA versus the mils in that aspect, there really is, in my opinion, no difference to an average shooter.
Okay. So, you know, I'm guessing there's not a whole lot of difference, but the one thing you guys really have to, you know, nail down if you are going to pick one or the other, make sure that your reticle and your actual optic, you know, coincide with each other, that you're using an MOA with an MOA, using a mil with a mil, and not swapping, because then you're going to have to sit there and do a lot more math for the different measurements. And that also goes, you know, if you're in the field and you got to do quick adjustments, you don't want to have to sit there and try and, you know, figure out the math because you have two different systems.
Yeah, and along with all of that, obviously finding the smallest mil or MOA is going to be your best option when it comes to precision shooting at distances or even close up. There was something that I was told by a range officer one time is aim small, miss small. You got a 1 MOA dot. That's going to be harder for your eyes to pick up when you're using both eyes, you know, running and gunning, tactical style shooting. But if you're going to be using that optic for precision long range, or you're going to be using it just for bench shooting or stuff like that, when you're at 1 MOA or 2 MOA is a pretty regular standard, your groupings are going to shrink because you're taking up less of that target. Now a 4 MOA dot like you have is probably a lot better for a battle rifle, something you're going to be moving around with. You can pick that optic up way easier because there's more of it to pick up. It's taking up more of the space, but when you're within 25 yards, you're taking up an inch or less with that dot.
Yeah, and the coolest part that, you know, us even going into this is I've been wanting to buy, you know, the 6.5 Creedmoor in a bolt action rifle. So this has really made me have to stop in. Me too, buddy. Me too. But the idea of, you know, what optic that I'm going to actually put on that rifle, because in the grand scheme of things, this MOA is, you know, or even mil is for a greater purpose of finding your zero with your rifle, with your, you know, your wind adjustments and your temperatures, and, you know, figuring out everything to get a nice precise shot. So in the, you know, grand scheme of things, you know, this is a bigger picture than just am I picking MOA or am I picking mil. It's going to be what you use all throughout and what you adjust if you are going to be shooting farther. So understanding this now and then, you know, progressing it into finding your zero and being able to shoot the longer and farther targets, you know, seems to be the path to go.
Yeah, and honestly, I would believe that picking one and just sticking with it for everything that you use, especially if you're going to be using long-range precision-style rifles, and that's what your purpose is for shooting, is trying to get the best grouping you can at a distance, because you're going to be doing all that math to understanding your ballistics of your round, the drop, all your different environmental effects on your projectile, and also knowing what the different markers are on your optic if you're using, you know, a variable power optic like a scope. When you stick with one, you get very good at it, and you can understand it, and you can pretty much pick up an optic, throw it on a rifle, and if you know your math, you know how to use that optic. Versus you try to switch, now you got to figure it all out again. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody likes math.
I like to keep it simple. Well, thank you guys for stopping by and, you know, coming and hanging out with us and maybe learning a thing or two about, you know, MOA and about mil. We got plenty of content, you know, in the YouTube channel that you guys can learn all kinds of stuff. We have an Instagram, a Facebook. We got all kinds of content going out there. We have a link tree in the description below. But we do have a Self-Defense Saturday that now comes out every Saturday. So you guys should definitely check out Chris and Tyler. They got videos coming out every Saturday now. It's going to be their own show happening now on the GWB Tactical channel. But always remember, guys,
Who's got your six?